Norristown native Mike Piazza is headed to the MLB Hall of Fame. Zach Gelb here with you. 1 minute past 11 o'clock here on WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. Now joining us on the hotline is a man that managed Mike Piazza in the MLB as his manager for the New York Mets and is now the athletic director at Sacred Heart University, and that's Bobby Valentine. Bobby V, Zach Gelb here. Thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
Zach, always great. Thanks. Great being on your show to talk about one of the greatest players to ever play the game.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I grew up as a Met fan going to games at Shea Stadium, sitting in that 46 section, row K. And I was a little bit annoyed that it took Mike 4 years to get into the Hall of Fame based off pure innuendo. But where were you when you found out Mike was going to the Hall of Fame, and what was your reaction?
Well, I was elated. I was here at Sacred Heart University. And, Zach, when you called and talked to my secretary here at Sacred Heart, Cheryl Madison, she's probably as big a Met fan as there is in the world. So she was keeping me posted minute by minute. And as soon as the vote came out, we celebrated together.
Taking you back to 1998, what came to mind? What was that first thought when you found out that Mike Piazza was going to be a member of the Mets?
Well, I think my first thought was disbelief because, I had a guy on the team named Todd Hundley, as you remember, who set a home run record for catchers just prior to that, and he was the catcher on the team. And to think that we were going to get another all-star catcher and have them both on the same roster was rather disbelief. I was in disbelief, but we made things work there for that first part of '98, and then when '99 came around, it was Mike all the way, and boy, are we glad we got him.
How would you describe Mike Piazza's impact if someone was to ask you what he meant to the Mets organization?
I think it's hard to really describe the impact other than to ask the opposition, and the opposition, I think, felt that we were instantly more credible. We were instantly more dangerous, and when the presence of a Mike Piazza is in your lineup, you have a chance of not only destroying the other team with a big run output, but you also have the chance of coming back anytime in the game.
He had so many enormous and powerful home runs, but to me, when taking a look back at his career, the one home run that stands out to me, and it goes beyond baseball, was the home run the first game back after 9/11. Taking a look back, what did that home run mean to you?
Well, you're right, Zach. On September 21st, we came back and resumed Major League Baseball and professional sports in New York after that horrific attack on our country and everything we stood for. And that home run was just a momentous occasion where all the frowns were turned upside down, where people who came wondering why they were coming to a sporting event at such a dire time in so many people's lives, when people were still grieving, still hoping and wishing that miraculously a loved one might be found from the rubble. We all of a sudden had sport transcend the moment and let people get back to normalcy in a very small way, but in a very direct way.
And it wasn't only the Mets. I remember a very powerful image of Joe Andruzzi running out of the tunnel before a Patriot and Jets game. And obviously his brother were New York City firefighters. And I think actually one of Joe's brothers' first day on the job was 9/11, and he came out running with the American flag. At the time, did you guys realize how powerful sports were to Americans trying to heal them post 9/11?
Well, we didn't know the overall impact, but quite a few of the Met players and coaches and Jay Horowitz. We were down in Ground Zero. We were there while it was still smoldering. I was there 2 days after the attacks. The players were there 5 days after the attacks, and the EMS workers, the first responders, the volunteers who were there amongst the tremendous rubble that were dirty and working 24/7. We knew the impact we had on their lives just by showing up on the streets. They lit up. They got them a new breath of air. We knew what difference it made when we went into the armories and the churches and the school halls where so many loved ones and family members were waiting and hope upon hope, and that something might come out of that rubble. So we knew the immediate impact of those who were close to the situation, but we didn't know just how dramatic it would be for everyone who was either watching TV or at the game personally or listening to it on the radio, because it really became an electrifying baseball game.
We're spending a few minutes with Bobby Valentine. Mike Piazza is going to the Hall of Fame, and his former manager joins us here right now. I want to take you back to another Piazza home run as well, and there was always a great rivalry between Mike and Roger Clemens, and I was at that game in 2002 where Sean Estes took Roger Clemens deep, and then a few innings later, so did Mike Piazza. Did Mike ever share his opinions and open up to you about his thoughts on Roger Clemens?
No. Matter of fact, he never did. No, there was a great rivalry. There was great competition. Mike owned him, really, until Roger hit him in the head during the interleague series. And even after that, Mike had a few good whacks off of him. But no, he never opened up. No.
And that's the surprising thing to me, is that Mike never opened up about it. Did that send a message to the locker room, really just to keep those emotions in check before facing Roger Clemens? Because I remember a lot was made going into that 2002 game.
I think it was overblown going into the 2002 game. We had Sean Estes on the mound. He wasn't even part of the team prior to that 2001. So he really had nothing to do with anything. And, for the most part, Mike never really believed in the idea. I don't believe, at least he never expressed it to me, but never thought that our game was such a game that we're supposed to have a grown-up stand 60 feet away from someone else and try to hit them with a thrown object. It's kind of juvenile, and it's also probably criminal when you think about it. So Mike never was the one to stand up and say, "Hey, make sure you throw this ball and hit somebody else with it."
Now, whenever people bring up the name Roger Clemens, people talk about the Hall of Fame debate about should these performance-enhancing drug users get put into the Hall of Fame. What's your stance on that?
He won seven Cy Youngs and deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest pitchers of his time, just as Mike, with all the innuendo, was one of the greatest catchers of all time. So I think that all that talk should be put to rest sooner rather than later.
Do you eventually think, and I agree with you, do you think we'll see that day when Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds get into the Hall of Fame?
I hope so, anyway. Otherwise it's going to, I think, diminish really what that hall, stands for.
You mentioned the word innuendo, and that's right. Mike was just killed based off pure innuendo. Does that annoy you when a player like Mike Piazza has to wait 4 years to get into the MLB Hall of Fame?
I don't know about being annoyed. I knew that he would eventually get in, and the timing was such that it was regretful that Mike had to be tossed into that whole thing. But as I say, Mike from his rookie year, when he was the rookie of the year, when he was hitting 360 for the Dodgers, when he was hitting 300 for the Mets, always was the stand-up guy, was always the center of attention, was always a Hall of Famer when he played.
We're spending a few more minutes with Bobby Valentine, who's kind enough to join us right now. And the story is just absolutely incredible, and it's very fitting that Ken Griffey Jr. is the first overall pick to go into the Hall of Fame, and Mike was the latest with the 62nd round being taken from Norristown, went to high school about 40 minutes from our studios in Phoenixville area high school. You saw Mike Piazza behind the scenes. Just take us through his work ethic.
Oh, one of the hardest workers that I've ever seen, and also one of the most intelligent guys. Your school system there did a great job. He had intellect, he had drive, desire. He was motivated to be great, and his work ethic showed it.
Just since we're here in Philadelphia, what memories come to mind when you guys took a road trip down the turnpike to play the Phillies at the Vet?
Oh, I don't know if I have one memory, Zach. It was always, heated rivalries there, and the fun part about it was we had some guys who could lift the ball, and the old Vet Stadium was a launching pad, so there were always exciting games there in Philadelphia.
Now, before we let you run, I do have to bring this up. I'll never forget when you were in the dugout after you got tossed with that disguise on. How did that idea come about? Because that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen a manager do.
Well, actually, that was because Mike almost got thrown out of that game. We called a pitch out, and the umpire called a catcher's balk against Mike after he stepped out, caught the ball, and threw the guy out at second base. And Mike was a little beside himself. I was beside myself, and I tried to control him and then tried to control myself. I got thrown out instead, and decided that the team needed a little levity to break the tension that was surrounding it at that time. And laughter was the remedy that was needed.
Before we let you run, now you're the athletic director at Sacred Heart. How did that interest develop of being an athletic director? And tell us some things you're doing at Sacred Heart as the AD.
Well, we have 32 Division I sports teams here, and I just got a call. I really didn't have the interest. I'm still learning the job. I luckily have some fabulous direct reports who do a great job of keeping 800 Division I athletes in stride. We had a 3.3 cumulative GPA amongst all of our athletes. We're winning championships. We're having fun, and we're building buildings and putting in new facilities. So the sky is really bright above Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Well, best of luck, Bobby. Fantastic stuff today, and we appreciate a few minutes.
Okay, Zach. Good interview. Thank you very much.
There is Bobby Valentine joining us on the hotline, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. Excellent stuff with him, and I'll say this about the whole PED issue in the Hall of Fame. I think guys like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens should be in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame because just to me, just like the whole Pete Rose controversy, I don't care if you ever get Pete Rose back in the game of baseball, but he should be in the Hall of Fame because you just can't ignore an era. And if I was to take my kid in, let's say, 15 years down the road to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, which I've been to many times in Cooperstown, it makes no sense when you go into the record books and say, hey, here's Roger Clemens with these statistics. Here's Barry Bonds with the most home runs. Here's Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Why aren't they in the Hall of Fame? I believe those guys should be on the Hall of Fame, and I think there needs to be a way to diversify the vote. These baseball writers right now have too much power in the vote, as they should right now, because it is the Baseball Writers Hall of Fame, but I really do believe that you need to go out there, keep the writers with the vote, expand the ballot from 10 names to 12 names with the max number, because you got guys not voting for Ken Griffey Jr. just because they want to keep other guys on. Ken Griffey Jr. should have got 100% of the vote. And then you also give a vote to broadcasters, team broadcasters. How can Vince Scully not have a vote? He should definitely have a vote. And then I would also give the MLB players that have been in the Hall of Fame a vote as well. That way you diversify it a bit, and then just maybe you start to see guys like Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens get into the Hall of Fame. But I don't think anything is going to change in the way you vote. But Mike Piazza was just such a special player. He is my favorite player of all time in the MLB, and he just hit these moonshot home runs. The impact he had on New York was so special, and the story is just one of the best stories you'll ever hear. It's a true Rocky story of an underdog, being that 62nd round pick, the connection with Tommy Lasorda and his father, and now he is the greatest hitting catcher of all time, and he'll be a member of the MLB Hall of Fame as he'll be inducted into Cooperstown in July. Time in the WHIP studios right now is 11:15. Zach Gelb here with you. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back right after these short messages.